Now remember, for the final turn-in for this, you don't have to do this step. I just think it looks better. And there were some things I could cover in this step that would probably be of interest to you, so we're combining it together. But all you really need is the model of the character or the creature itself. You don't have to pose it, and you don't have to put it into a scene. But I'm going to create a turnaround scene for my creature. You can see already I've got a base, and this is similar to the turnaround that we did in the first module. But I have a base, I have a ground plane. This gray back here is a flat plane to catch the shadows. I have the rock that we made earlier. I have the plant that we made earlier, although I've colorized it to be brown instead of green. And I have some trees that I also made. And the trees have these great big wings on them. Those are masked. And if I render this, you'll see that the trees are masked, and I have this like dead trees here. So I have all the objects that I need for my turnaround. I'm going to make the ground plane and texture it, and then position these pieces on the ground plane. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these props here, and I'm going to hide them. And I'm going to grab the ground plane and hide that as well so that I can fit this. I'm going to go to my 4 views. I'm going to grab the camera and the turnaround rig, and I'm going to hide those as well. So now I can fit everything into my view really easily. I'm going to go to Create and Plane, and I'm going to create a plane that covers the top of the base. And I'm going to make the plane have a lot of segments. We'll try 200 in each direction because we're going to displace this. And this is for decoration only. And I'm going to lower that plane right down above our top. And what we need to do now is cut this out. You can see that the part we want to cut out is that piece, this cylindrical piece, so it fits on top. And to do that, what we're going to need to do, I'm going to push this up a little bit, is grab our base. It's an edit poly. I'm going to grab one edge here and hit loop. Okay. Loop won't work. So we're going to grab manually. We'll grab all the edges all the way around. And I'm going to hit Create Shape from Selection. We're going to call this Ring. It's on Smooth. And now I'm going to select that new object, which is the ring. And you can see that that ring now is a separate object, actually separate shape. And I'm going to make that ring into a editable poly, and that's going to make it solid. And if I'm going to go ahead and color this a slightly different color so you can see it. Oh, I've got a material on it. Let me color this a different color just so you can see it, so you can tell that that's separate from the base. Okay, and then I'm going to grab this top polygon, and I'm going to bevel this straight up, or you could extrude it. It doesn't really matter. And we'll make the outline amount 0. And we'll hit OK. So now we have this cylinder in here. I'm looking at the sides. I picked smooth to be my my conversion type from the original shape, and I should have picked linear because I've got a ton of sides here, but it'll work for my demonstration. You can pick linear and it won't be so complex. Okay, and at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower the plane. I'm going to lower it right above my disk, and I'm going to lower this so everything is intersecting. And I'm going to now put a Boolean on this plane. And a Boolean is a compound object. So create geometry compound object, Boolean. We've done this before. And I'm going to pick operand B, which is this big cylinder. Hope it doesn't crash. We don't really care what we inherit the material from. Let's see what we get. Okay, it did cut it. I can see there's a line here. And what I'm looking for, I don't want that. Let's see if intersection gets it for us. No. Okay, there is a line there. If I zoom in here, there's a line right here. What I'm going to try and do, I'm going to back up here a little ways. I want that Boolean to work a little bit better than it's working. Let's see, did we go back far enough? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so we're back before we applied the Boolean. I'm going to go back to my plane, and I'm going to knock the amount of the intersections down. I'm hoping I don't have to go back and recreate this cylinder. So let's try this again. This time I'm going to try the cylinder, and I make a Boolean out of the cylinder. See if this works a little bit better. Alright, let's try this one. Now I'm getting an outline there, and that's not really what I wanted. Okay. I think what I'm going to have to do is very quickly, I'm going to go back, get this plane all set up. I'm going to delete this cylinder, and I'm going to go back to my original disk here. And this time when I create the selection, I'm going to make it linear. Because that's going to give me a lot less edges. And I'll convert this to an edit poly. There we go. And we'll add some color to it once again. So you can see it is separate. And then we'll, in this case, we're going to grab this top piece and we'll just extrude this guy straight up. See, there's a lot less edges in this time. And it doesn't have a bottom on it. What I'm going to do is add a cap modifier on this, cap holes. And what that does is it caps the bottom piece there, and that's going to help it be a little bit better as a Boolean object. So once again, I'm going to try and Boolean these. I'm going to select the cylinder this time. We'll go to Boolean, pick operand B, and it should work a little bit better. Okay. Well, it worked a little better. Still not real happy with that. Thinking how I want to solve this. There is a, it has cut into it, and I could go through and delete these, but there is an edge right here. That's not really what I want to deal with. I think what I'm going to do one of these little problems. How do I solve this? Tell you what, I'm going to turn off the video here and I'm going to figure out how I can cut this piece out, because this isn't going to work the way I want it to. And I'll start the video and explain what I did when I come up with a solution. Okay, we're back. And what I had done wrong is when I capped the hole, the bottom of that cylinder extrusion was hollow, and when I capped it I was on sub-selection, and so it didn't cap it. And you have to have a solid object, like a solid cylinder, in order to bore through this. Once I did that, I could select the cylinder and the ground plane as my Boolean, and I hit intersection. And now I have this disc that will fit perfectly over my plane here. And that's what we want. We want all the subdivisions here because we're going to displace this. Okay, now we're back. We're going to convert this to an edit poly. So we're out of our Boolean. And what we're going to do is go all the way down here to our paint deformations, which are way down at the bottom. I'm going to hit push-pull. And if you remember now, when we paint on this, that's going to deform this area. I'm going to expand this. You can see my brush moving across the surface there, although I am going to change the color so you can see it a little bit better. There you go. You can see the brush moving across the surface, and this is an error there. Just wiggle my camera. Okay, and under brush options, we've done this in the first module. I'm going to make the size a lot smaller, and I'm going to make the maximum strength a lot smaller. And all I'm going to do is hit push-pull, and I'm just going to sort of paint on here. That's still a little too strong. So my maximum strength is going to go way down. Size is going to go up. There we go, almost there. Looks like we're going to have to go to the O's. Almost. Okay, and that's making it so that it's a little bit more bumpy. And if I get out of edged faces, you can see that I'm painting on this surface. I want to stay away from the sides for the most part. We can fix them. We're going to have to anyways, but don't make the sides too bumpy. And I really don't want this to be too bumpy. I'm going to bump this up to more of a marker type brush, and what that'll allow me to do is get these kind of little mounds that I think look good for dirt if we overlap those. And it just makes these kind of little blobby mounds that I like for these things. And I'm going to make my size a little bit smaller. And we'll just kind of mold all that stuff in there. There we go. So we just want the surface to be kind of rocky and uneven. I'm going to build up this side over here a little bit more than some of the others, because that's where I'm going to put that rock that I have. There we go. And we're all done with that. I'm going to go ahead and save this where I'm at, just so if something happens, we don't lose our work. And now I'm going to deal with the sides of this. I'm going to go back to my four corners, or my four views. And under Modify, I'm going to go all the way back up here, select Polygons. Actually, how about Vertices? A little bit easier. Soft Selection, and I'm going to say Use Soft Selection. And what I'm going to do, the corners, the outside edges are already selected on this. That's from my Boolean. If you need to select them, you would select all the vertices on the outside corner, and if you remember from the first module, we can do that just by selecting our paint selected region, and we can just kind of paint those in, if it will let me here. There we go. So we can just paint those in. And I'm going to go to Scale, and then I'm just going to scale these together, and if I zoom in here, it's going to be, I don't have much to scale, but you can see it moving around, and all I'm doing is just kind of flattening the edges into each other. And we're going to expand the soft selection out a little bit here and do it one more time. That's just going to blend them a little bit better. And then we'll just jam those edges right down into our base, right above it. And I'm going to zoom in real close here and make sure that we are right where we need to be. There we go, a little bit off. Zoom over here. Okay, here we are. Down a little bit. There we go. And now I've got my base all set up. So you can see that's what the base is going to look like. And now I'm going to texture this base real quickly. I'm going to put just a regular UVW map on it. All I need is a planar map. I'm going to jump over here to Photoshop, and you can see I've made this texture. This matches the rock. And I've already, I thought I had already saved it. I'm going to save this. Oops. There we go. Okay, we'll save it as ground. And hopping back over here, we'll make a new shader. And we'll load this ground texture in there. And since it's planar mapped, we can just plop it on there. And that's going to be our ground texture, at least for the time being. I'm going to now go back in and unhide everything. And I can start grabbing these elements and moving them over into the scene. And this rock I'm going to have kind of sunk down in there. I've got my camera rigged already for turnaround, so that's why I can kind of spin this around really easily. And we're just going to kind of place some of these in here real quick. Remember, our creature's going to be in here as well eventually. And once I get these pieces set, I'm going to cut away and place the character in here because that's going to take a little bit longer. I'm not sure if these trees are going to stay or not right now. Just kind of playing with them. We don't have to keep things the same scale either. They can shrink down. These can be little shrubs. In fact, I think that's probably going to work a little bit better in the long run. And I'm going to make a few clones of this plant. Just make them copies for the time being. And try to get things kind of uneven, spread out. They'll just look a little bit better. I'm going to rotate these plants around a little bit so they don't look the same from each view. Tilt him a little bit, tilt him out. Get it so those leaves don't intersect quite as much. There we go. And this guy is going to be rotated around a little bit. Make them different scales, different sizes, just enough so you can't tell it's the same plant. Probably get another plant over here. There we go. We'll break up that angle a little bit. I like to cover up the ground a lot with these plants just because it casts shadows. And the shadows will look alright. Okay, let's render this and we'll see what it looks like. Now this doesn't have much in the way of lighting in there, but that's looking pretty good. I like that so far. I've spent some time. It's been actually about an hour and a half that I've prepared this scene. I got a little more carried away with it than I originally planned. But I've done a lot here. I've imported the creature, and he had a biped rigged up to him that I had done earlier, and I've just placed his feet on the ground and raised his back a little bit and had him turn towards the camera a little bit. I've positioned the rock, and I've made a clone of the rock down here, so I've got these two rocks. That breaks up the surface down here so it looks a little more appealing. I've made a lot of clones of the brown plant that we had created earlier. Remember, I had color corrected it to brown. It was originally green. And I've placed those throughout the scene. I've also placed, there's two trees, another one's behind him here, that are dead trees with massed limbs. So all of those I positioned. That didn't really take too long. I've added a light rig to the scene, which is a faked global lighting, and I'll include that light rig in the folder. It's about 50 spotlights shining down onto the scene, all at a very low multiplier, and so they're simulating this global illumination. You can see this soft shadow along the base. So they're simulating that, and what that does, I could have added a skylight to the scene, but the render times would be somewhere around 10 minutes per frame for this. And with this faked global lighting that I'm using, my render times are only about 3 minutes per frame. So I save a lot of time, and it's just a rig that I use. And again, that'll be included in your folder if you'd like to look at it. I've added a direct light for my shadows, and the direct light is coming from the upper left in this case, so that I can get some shadows cast down on the scene. And I've made the shadows ray trace so that they will take effect with all these masked objects that I have. I've colored the base brown color. You can see it here, a wood color. This came from the material library in Max, and all I've done is then blended this. You can see my diffuse color is at 34%, and I've blended it with a color that will match my rocks a little better so that it doesn't stand out as much. I've darkened the background, and I've made the lights fall off, which gives me this gradient in the background, making it appear that the background falls off a little bit. All of my normal maps have been applied, and I tweaked a few of them just so they would look a little bit better. Some of them, like the rock, were originally a little too bumpy, so I toned down the bumpiness on them. And I'll render out this full turnaround, and that will also be available in my folder. But if I show the turnaround here on my computer, it doesn't appear. So we'll have to do it just a render for the time being. Okay, I left a few things to do here until the very end. And what I want to do is I want to address this ground here, this ground plane that we made originally in the first part of the video. And I want to tackle that texture and make it look a little bit better than it does now. So we're going to jump over to Photoshop. And here's the texture as it is now. Now, that circular base is fit right into the center of this, because this texture is fit right around that base using UV mapping. And so what I need to do is I need to come up with a template. And here's a top-down render of the scene. And this is a good little shortcut for just positioning things within a texture so that you know what to put on the texture and where to match up with your scene. I'm going to crop this texture right down to where that ground plane hits the edge. And it's just the ground plane. And then I'm going to drag this over to my picture, or my texture. I don't need this any longer. And I'm going to size this up so that it fits right in there. And we can, let's see, go down a little bit there. And over here we are fine. Over here we're fine. Down here we're fine. Okay. And what I'm going to do is then put this in a channel that I can see through to the bottom. So I'm changing my layer types right now, just so I can see through to the bottom. And I think I'm actually going to be better off just going back up to normal, and I'm going to knock the fill down. And you can see it matches right up with the texture, pretty much, close enough for us. And I'm just going to, I think, leave it right around there so we can see through to the texture. So that's my top view, and that's my texture underneath it. Now I'm going to go back down to the layer below it. I'm going to make a new layer here. And all I'm going to do is just paint in some coloring, and I wanted some green in here. And here we go. I'm just going to paint in some green where these plants are. There's a lot of shadows down under here. And you can see that now that green will lay right where those plants are in my original scene. And I can play with my layers to find something that will blend that green into the background. That's not too bad there. I kind of like that. And I think what I'm going to do is just erase this a little bit. There we go. I'm going to erase away a little bit of this. There we go. And you can see that's going to lay right underneath those plants and give it a little bit of a green tint, which is what I'm after. I'm also going to use, I like this root structure here, so I'm going to kind of grab a big chunk of this image and copy it. And I want that laying right down here in this open area. So we're talking about right in here on our texture map, right down in front of where he's at. I think that'll make the picture look a little better. We're going to move this to the top for right now to size it. Holding down Shift to constrain it. And I think that's going to be about the right size. And we will play with our, whoops. We're going to move it down, we're going to turn this off, and then we're going to play with our layer types. Once again, see if we can find something that blends that in well. Overlay isn't bad. Hard light's not bad. I think we're going to go with overlay, and I'm going to adjust the color so that it matches a little better. There we go. So that matches pretty well. I'm going to just touch up the sides a little bit with my eraser so that it doesn't have any harsh seams. Get rid of that part there. And now we've added in that root that we liked. And all I'm going to do is make a new layer here really quick, and I'm going to just touch up this root using white. I'm going to drag a piece of, or a little bit of white right along that root. Just kind of smear in the rest of it here. And I'm going to put this on Color Dodge and knock the fill way down so that that root pops out a little bit more. And I'm going to do the same thing with black in a new layer. And I'm just going to follow right along it for a shadow. This is just a simulated shadow. Nothing fancy. And we can use, I use the smear tool to just kind of make the shadow uneven. There we go. And again, we'll knock the fill amount down on that. So that'll pop that root out a little bit better. I like that. And I think we're going to go down to our grass here. I'm going to make that a little bit lighter and just kind of touch it up a little bit more. There we go. And I can close this. I'm going to add some of these plants here just so you can see how it will work. We'll drag those over here. We'll put them kind of right here in the, well, let's see, where can we see them? This is why we have our template. We can see them a little bit better right here, I think. And we'll erase around the edges. Get some leaves in there. And again, we'll play with our layers. See if there's a layer that will burn that in. Probably overlay is what's going to work. I think I like them just natural, actually. I think I'm going to leave them kind of normal, and I'm just going to erase out around some areas here. I usually use a layer type, but in this case it looks like it's going to look a little bit better if I just erase out some of them. There we go. And now we've got some leaves laying on the floor and some plants that look pretty good. And I'm going to go ahead and save this as a PSD file. This is going to be ground 01 PSD. And we'll go ahead and flatten this. And we're going to save this as a Targa, and our original one was called ground 01. We're going to call this ground 02, just in case we don't like it. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and make a normal map out of this. Let's see if we can get it a little bit higher here. I think that's probably pretty good. There's our normal map. I'm going to save that. Save that as a TIFF file. And we'll call it ground 02 TIFF. Okay, and we're all done here in Photoshop, so we'll hop back over to Max and we'll deal with our ground now. I think this was our ground, yep. This is our ground. I'm going to go ahead and close this. And I'm going to put ground 02 in here to see what it looks like. You can see the difference between them. And it's going to fit right in place. We don't need to do anything else. And then under bump, I'm going to apply a normal bump And I'll put my ground bitmap or my TIFF file in there. Nope, that's not it. That's it. And you can see that now my ground is a little bit bumpier. And I'm going to go ahead and render this, so I'll turn off the video for a second, and then we'll come back and we'll look at the final result. The ground now is a little bit rougher looking, which matches our rocks better. It's not as smooth because we've added the normal map. And you can see some of the green that we added down here ended up right where we wanted it to be. He's actually standing on the root. You can't see it, but it goes right through there. And we've kind of made this rock pop out a little bit more, and we've ended up with a nice render. So again, you don't have to do the diorama to get credit for the creature. What you need is a textured creature that's pretty good quality. He doesn't even need to be posed. Just the textured creature will get you credit. But if you want to show it off better, you can certainly go to a lot of effort and end up with a nice render in the end. So do whatever you want with these and have fun with them. I like the turnarounds. You don't have to do it that way. But you give it a try. Use some of those techniques.